Hey everyone, it's Brad and Josh here, and we welcome you to We'll Bring the Popcorn, the ultimate film and TV podcast.
On today's episode, we're going to be reviewing the new comedy film Good Fortune, as well as Season 2 of DC's Peacemaker.
Well, Jim Carrey just can't stay retired. It looks like he's in talks to play the lead in the live-action Jetsons film. That would be playing George Jetson. Looks like Colin Trevorrow, who did the Jurassic World trilogies, in talks to direct, but it's kind of interesting that they're getting him another adaptation to join into here, and I don't know fully how I feel about this because that cartoon was very kind of niche. That it had one season in the 60s, even when like very few markets out there could do color television in that time, and it lasted only one season, and then jump ahead almost 20 years later to the mid 80s, and they got two more seasons there. So I think a lot of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s, you know, we more remember that two seasons in the 80s. I thought it ran for a lot longer, like all the reruns and everything else that we saw of it as kids. But it's one of more the kind of obscure type of things. I mean, you've got the robot maid Rosie, you've got his dog Astro, but you have like, it was a lot about the style. It was that very sharp, pointy, futuristic of what the 60s, 70s thought that the future was going to be. You have flying saucer shaped, you know, vehicles that can be folded up into a briefcase and stuff. Like, it's going to be very CGI heavy. I'm just curious if they stick to the retro futuristic, kind of like Fantastic Four First Steps did, or if they're going to try to do a more modern futuristic take on it, which I think might be a bad idea. I think it needs for it to stick to the retro futuristic look.
Yeah, that's definitely the aesthetic they need to keep, and it kind of blows my mind going back and looking at it when we were talking about doing this as a news story, but the fact that it had like a 20-year gap in between, like I don't think a lot of people remember that or even know that, because like you said, we grew up in the, you know, born in the 80s, grew up in the 80s and 90s, like loving, it was like that and the Flintstones were like the two, like, quote unquote, old school, like, kind of cartoons that a lot of people grew up watching. And the fact that it didn't have as long of a run as people kind of remember that it had, and it's only 75 episodes, but it's interesting that they're coming back and doing this. I love Jim Carrey. Like, I'll always love Jim Carrey as an actor, a comedic actor. He's got some of my all-time favorite comedies, but the aesthetic of this movie is going to be really important to kind of nail down. I hope they do stick with that, like, retro futuristic aesthetic when it comes to, like, how they shoot this, because, you, like you said, you know it has to lean into the CGI heavy stuff, but it's kind of funny that the time period that the Jetsons were trying to predict the future is kind of like where we're at now, and where are my flying cars? Like, everybody's like, you know, the two things we want are flying cars and hoverboards, like Back to the Future.
And a flying car that you can fold up in a briefcase and not have to worry about a parking spot.
Right, or even just a flying car in general, you know what I mean? Like, we don't have any of that stuff yet. Like, I'd love my own personal, you know, solo spaceship to just fly around for stuff in, but that, every time you hear the words The Jetsons, that theme song gets stuck in my head like an earworm, just crawls its way in there and just gets stuck in my brain again. And I'm going to be singing, you know, that theme song for the rest of the day now, just to get it in your head. If you haven't watched The Jetsons, listen to the theme song for it. It's catchy. It's good. It's smart. Like, it's well written, but yeah, it's interesting that they're coming back to it. And it's something that was good enough to lure Jim Carrey out of a supposed retirement that he's, you know, gone in and out of a few times now to kind of come back and do other things. But you're never going to hear me complaining about seeing Jim Carrey in something. The quality of the film could be hit or miss, like a lot of his more recent stuff has been, but I'm excited to see what they do with it for sure.
Yeah, it's also curious to think about his age when it comes to playing George. Are they going to age the kids up? Because Elroy was much younger, kind of elementary school age, while Judy was high school age and stuff. And, you know, Jim's in his 60s and everything. So you're looking at if they, you know, have his wife in there, like she's probably going to have to be in her 50s to 60s as well. So they're going much older with the parents. What are they going to do with the kids? Are they going to age them up, or are we still going to have them, you know, being younger? And like, who would play, like Catherine O'Hara could be a fun, like, to play opposite of Jim Carrey, of being husband and wife, and that kind of retro futuristic. Like, if you really want to go hammy and slapsticky and just let those two go at it, that could be a lot of fun. But yeah, it's kind of interesting that we know there's sequels and reboots and everything just done to death. And it's interesting that they're going to try to do the Jetsons here. We had the Flintstones live action movies that we did in the 90s. And you thought if they were going to do something like that with the Jetsons, it might have been in the 90s or early 2000s. And now we're 2025. It's quite a while after that show. I mean, I think the last season was 1986 or something like that. So it's been quite a while since it's had any relevance at all to anything in pop culture. Like you said, that theme song sticks in your head, it, just like the Flintstones and all the kind of classic cartoons had those theme songs that stuck in your head and stuff. But it's been quite a while, so it's going to be interesting. They're going with this, with how CG heavy it's going to be. It's not going to be the cheapest thing, so it kind of feels like this is a little bit of a risk that they're taking on an old property to see if it has any legs. And, if it gets done, we're looking at maybe it's another one to add into 2027 that's already stacked.
That year is going to be absolutely ridiculous for movies. There's so much stuff coming out, but I could talk about what movies not probably going to be added to that list now that, unfortunately has to do with, just how poorly it's been performing at the box office. And that's Tron Ares. Like, you can go back in our most recent episode and see what we thought about Tron Ares as a film. We talked about how it struggled, storyline wise, but it was a spectacle visually, but the movie itself sets up for a fourth movie, but it doesn't look like it's going to be made just because of how poorly it's done at the box office. So now you've got, the company behind it potentially not willing to pony up for a fourth film now because it's going to be such a big financial loss. And you're starting to see some of these movie studios outright rejecting doing more and like scrapping creative plans for things because they're not performing well, which is a very interesting case because you have, the optics of Jared Leto and some of the controversy around him and not really being a successful leading man because he's had, at this point, several films that have flopped.
Yeah, if you look, like he's been in several movies that have made a lot of money, but he wasn't the main male lead in it. He was more of a supporting actor or part of a large ensemble cast. But as the direct lead, his box office numbers are so low. Which some insiders are already pointing fingers at that. That's part of the failures, that you have a guy who has so many controversies in his personal life behind just everything. I don't want to get into all the nastiness of everything with that because there's still a lot of litigation and stuff that's going on with things in his personal life. But, he's a decent actor. He's a decent musician and stuff as well. But it doesn't translate. We all know Morbius was such a huge bomb for Sony with that. And it looks like Disney, what they're saying is Disney may retire Tron on the big screen. So we don't know if this means that maybe they'll look at doing something on streaming, whether it be a series or a film direct to streaming. But I mean, both Tron Legacy and Tron Ares cost almost $200 million to make before marketing. So it's not a very cheap film. I mean, when you're talking about some of the bigger blockbusters we had, it's a little bit lower. And we talked about last week how like the Heat sequel is going to cost even more than Tron and Ares did potentially here, but it's not a cheap thing to make. And I don't know if they're going to spend that much money on streaming because it takes a lot of digital effects for what is, especially if they spend most of the time in the grid, which Tron Ares fully didn't, but they brought the grid into the real world, which had its own CGI, trouble. But it's one that it still annoys me. Like I enjoy the visual splendor so much, and I enjoyed doing the 3D and the motion seats with it for the overall experience. It was just how they just didn't care about trying to make a cohesive story that made sense in the Tron. Tron was in the 80s. We got early 2000s for Tron Legacy, and now we have 2025 that we got Ares, but they just really didn't bring it all together. And something like this could have been, you could have had a Tron trilogy that you really nailed and you knocked out with having more about Flynn maybe finally getting out of the grid or just killing him off or doing something in it. And they just failed like so completely with that, which I'm disappointed that we won't probably get that fourth film to finish maybe Flynn's story and with Cora and Sam and everything. But it's also like, well, if this is the best effort they can give us on a story, then it's probably best that it ends here.
Yeah, and going the series route could be interesting because you can pull back the budget on it to not have to invest as much to do a series as you do. Mm-hmm. But That's even more nowadays. That's not the case because you're hearing about these bloated budgets on like streaming services shows. A good example of that is the Lord of the Rings, you know, series on Amazon that's costing they've invested like $1 billion into it, and you're hearing like how much, Warner Brothers is investing in the Harry Potter series. It's like going to be a ton of money. And how much is that really going to be recouped financially being put on a streaming service as opposed to like putting these out in the theaters where you're much more likely to recoup your financial, investment in that, especially with Harry Potter. I mean, my God, you take those series and turn it back into a film again, and it's probably going to make a ton of money. Like, it's really interesting to see like the reasoning behind investing so much financially in a show that you're not going to have tangible, there's a tangible way to figure out how you're going to recoup your investment in that, because we don't know what that's going to do for them business wise. Is it going to flock, millions and millions of people to your streaming service that it makes up that difference? And it's going to be an interesting case study to see like how all of these properties, and companies start to handle, taking things to streaming, which everybody says is the future, but like
every service is struggling.
Everyone is like, because everything is expensive and people are having to pick and choose what they keep. I've dropped a couple of streaming services just because I don't use them as regularly. Like, and it's unfortunate, but it's an interesting case study to see what things are going to look like in a few years, like what bubble is going to burst where, and see what happens.
Yes, you got Netflix. If you do the highest tier with 4K and everything's almost $30 a month now, and even after Tron Ares, pretty much bombing, it made like 33 million domestically, 60 million internationally, and it's made, I think it had like a 75% drop off this weekend, which is a huge drop off. So it's clearly not going to kind of match. Like Tron Legacy ended up making about 400 million, which between spending 3 to 350 on marketing, you're looking at less than $100 million profit on that, which to most studios is not a success when you're only making, that much back on it. But yeah, Disney announced that they're about to raise prices again on Disney Plus, and I think the bundle between ESPN, Hulu, and Disney Plus is going to be $30 or more now. So they're all getting more expensive. So we got away from satellite and cable subscriptions being $100 a month, but now you've got 30 streaming providers who are getting up to $30 a month. So you're going to be spending more now to get access. And I've been the same. I've dropped several because I just don't watch it. And I'm probably going the route of a lot of people that when a show or a film comes out on that service, well, all right, I'll subscribe for 1 month once that whole series has dropped, and I'll binge watch it, and then I'll cancel after that month instead of keeping that recurring subscription, because it's just not worth spending $200-$300 a month on all of these different streaming providers to have everything.
Yeah, it's tough, man. Especially, and that's coming from us, and we're content people. You know what I mean? We like to watch a lot of things, and we're at that point now with ourselves too. And we can't imagine, like all of you, like in the situations you guys may be in, having to pick and choose what you watch and what you don't spend your money on. And it's just, it's unfortunate that, there's deeper conversations to be had about people's, financial situations, and everything's raising at a rate that's not matching how much people make.
You're cracking down on sharing, so you can't share outside of. I can't even share in my own house. I've talked about this so much that I have wired devices and I have wireless devices. But if I'm watching on a wired device, Netflix thinks I'm on a different network from my home, and so if the kids are trying to watch Netflix in their bedroom or something, I have to authorize for them to be able to watch it in their room.
Yeah, it's so weird that they're cracking down. How they're cracking down on this stuff. I get it from a business perspective, but from a practical standpoint, it's just a mess.
You feel like there's a crash coming for the streaming services, because if they all stop streaming, as we've talked about, families with kids in college or something that share with them, well, now you have to pay extra to be able to get them outside. Even me within my own house have troubles with this, IP locking, because I have wired and wireless stuff, and in the house. It's just creating a big mess, and a lot of people are speaking with their money of canceling the services because they're having to jump to too many hoops, and it just costs too much money to go through it.
It's a mess, and something's got to give at some point, and we'll see what breaks first.
But speaking of Netflix, we do have some more information on Stranger Things season 5, so we're closing in. First part is going to be hitting here in just a few weeks in November, but we got some more details about it. So season 5 is going to pick up 18 months after season 4, so we kind of know there's a decent little time jump in there. It's also been, 3 years in real life since season 4 to season 5. The Duffer Brothers did confirm the first 4 episodes will run between 54 and 83 minutes, and the series finale, which is going to drop at the very end of the year, is going to be 2 hours long. Now, there are some reports by, of course, there's those social media accounts that want to be the first to get information out, and they're trying to say, well, every episode's going to be at least 90 minutes long. Duffer Brothers finally kind of put a kibosh on that. Like, no, not quite. I mean, they're still over or around an hour, but they're not quite pretty much movies of every single episode.
Yeah, it's been so much mixed messaging on this last season as far as like what they're doing. Like they say it's intense, but it's like they said it's like filming 8 movies, but the run times aren't lining up with that based on what the Duffer Brothers are saying. Yeah. So this is coming directly from the creators of the show themselves. So it's been a kind of a source of misinformation, it appears like, that's come out about the length and the episode run times, because I know a lot of people are actively planning on blocking out large chunks of time dedicated to watching this when it comes out, because it's going to break all kinds of viewership records when it does finally come out. And then, feel how you will about them breaking it up into 3 parts, but it's interesting that it's not going to be the long, lengthy episode runtimes, and I'm wondering how people are going to react to that, knowing, like, having such high expectations for it being that long, and then eventually getting it, because who knows if everybody's going to see this news before it comes out. Like, if you're going in expecting like a 2-hour episode for episode 1 to kick off, and it's only like 54 minutes, that could hinder some people's enjoyment of the show because they have such lofty expectations for it.
And like you said, they're breaking it up, but they're breaking it up across 2 months. So you've got 3 parts in 2 months' time. Like, why not just drop it all at once, or drop almost everything? Yeah. And if you want to have some build-up, drop the finale by itself a couple weeks later, so people have to. You could have done a weekly drop, which Netflix doesn't really do, but it is kind of weird that they decided to chop it up in 3 different parts there. And yeah, the hype has been, it's like 8 movies. Not quite. An hour isn't really. I mean, the definition of kind of a movie running time at minimum is an hour and a half, is that 90-minute mark. So not quite there. I'm still really looking forward to it. They do say in the finale they're finally going to address exactly what the upside down is. They've gone back and forth, like, should we do it in season 3 or season 4? And they finally kind of saved it for the finale. So we're finally going to see exactly why and where and what the upside down is, which could be a very dangerous thing for them to do. Like, you could just leave it being a mystery and have all that, but if people don't really like, I'm thinking about Lost, where how they explain what the island is and everything that happened on that island was, and that was a very big disappointment for a lot of people for a show that was so beloved and hyped and was one of the biggest TV shows out there, as Stranger Things is. That finale let a lot of people down when they finally went to the explanation of what happened with them all.
Yeah, you wonder if how it's gonna affect the legacy of a show if the ending like that. We have so many instances of bad finales just ruining TV shows for people, or bad last seasons kind of doing the same thing. I mean, we could do almost an entire episode on just that, and we probably could at some point do one. It'd be fun to kind of go in and kind of talk about epic TV shows that kind of let you down at the end, you know what I mean, and just don't stick the landing like they need to. But it's interesting, the release schedule for this show, because you have Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then New Year's. So it's like the spacing out isn't even that great with the last 2 parts of it, because it's only like a week apart from each other.
And times when everyone's busy and out spending time with family and everything else too, it's like
people will make time for it.
Yeah, we're going to make time for it, but it's kind of, you do it around big holidays. It's about getting together with people.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what they want, because a lot of people bond by watching this show. So I get them doing it when they did, but it seems so silly to do a 3-part a 3-part release window within 6 weeks.
Yep.
Or,
it is.
Yeah.
You could have done a part 1 and part 2, one in November and one in December, and it would have made a little bit more sense.
Yeah, kind of like how they did with season 7, where the first half dropped, and then like 2 months later, you got the season finale, the back half of it, which was just absolutely epic. But it's gonna be fun. I can't wait to see how they stick the landing on it, and hopefully the finale delivers, because that's a big deal to wrap what's arguably the biggest overall Netflix series of all time. It's the OG show. Mm-hmm. It's the reason why, in my opinion, that Netflix is as successful as it is, because of a show like Stranger Things, which was their first big original television property that really blew up and raised the platform for that streaming service. And I think it's really important that they get the ending right to kind of send people out happy, because that show is the reason why so many of these other shows are made and are doing as well as it is, and there's a lot riding on it.
And it's kind of crazy because we know the Duffer Brothers are basically moving on from Netflix after Stranger Things. They have a few spinoffs and some other things they're doing for them, because they signed a new deal with, I believe, Paramount, because they gave them movie deals. And the Duffer Brothers did reveal, and I wonder if it was a one last jab about why they left Netflix, was that they asked for the finale to be released in theaters, and Netflix very quickly said no. Like, the fans watch it all on Netflix, they should watch it on Netflix, and they very quickly shot that down, while they're now signing deals with AMC theaters to put more stuff in, because K-pop Demon Hunters did so well on the sing-along version, which they're putting back in theaters on Halloween here. But their biggest property with Stranger Things, they were so quick to say no. And you think that's got to have led to some of the tension of them wanting to leave, because they want theatrical experiences. They want things in theaters, and Netflix just, they're the biggest kind of leader in the streaming space of trying to kill the theatrical experience.
Sure, and it's been weird how they've done some of their other theatrical releases for stuff, giving it like a 2-week run in theaters before it comes out like a month later. There's a small part of me that, if this is as big and epic of a finale as we're hoping that we get, that eventually they do kind of cave, and we're like, all right, we'll give it a limited run of like 2 weeks in a theater too. It doesn't have to be like immediately after the release of the episode, but do it in like a dead period, like March or early April or something, to like let people go out and see that finale in a theater experience. I think could be something that's a really cool and like special event that I think could do really well for them, especially considering how popular K-pop Demon Hunters was and did. I'm not saying it would be that popular if it made it out into theaters, but you never know. Like, it could do significant gangbusters. I know a large number of people that I know would be down to go see it in the theaters, and we'll see what happens with it. But that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, because I fully expect, since we touch on with the Harry Potter series, that they put the first episode in theaters, or maybe when they get to the Deathly Hallows that they put the finale and stuff. And I definitely see them trying to put some of those Harry Potter series episodes out in theaters, and it feels like maybe that should be somewhat of a new thinking behind some of these bigger series and adaptations. If you're taking big things like Harry Potter and putting them on TV, that give them limited runs with some of those episodes. Like, I know even we mentioned with the Lord of the Rings series on Amazon, the first 2 episodes were released in theaters, and we went and saw that. So you get that theatrical experience of Lord of the Rings. I have a feeling that's probably going to become a little more common, probably not by Netflix, but from others here, and especially I see Warner Brothers and HBO wanting to release some of those Harry Potters in theaters. So it's going to be interesting to see if we do get that trend, and if Netflix starts lightening with this deal with AMC, if they start lightening up on allowing their shows to have something, or movies having something, because the latest one is Frankenstein, which it didn't release anywhere near us where we could go see it, other than I think next week it's expanding in a few more that we'd have to travel a bit to go see it. It's got that 2 weeks limited theatrical run before it comes out on Netflix, which you would hope that you would get a little bit more than just a very small limited release window in the big cities and stuff, so more people can enjoy it, because then it's like, well, what are you really expecting it to do in theaters if you're giving it like 500 screens instead of 3,000?
Yeah, it's an interesting rollout strategy that they've got, going on for some of these, and I'd love to be in the room where they kind of talk about those things and see see what strategically makes sense for them. But one thing I do want to pivot us to now is a complete 180 from just streaming service movie talk, and kind of back into sports a little bit, because you have Apple is, with the success of the F1, the movie. We've talked about them trying to get the rights to Formula One, active Formula One races. And it appears they've been successful at doing it. So they've now signed a new 5-year deal to have Formula One races exclusively on Apple TV Plus in the US starting next year. So that's a big deal for them, because, it might not be the biggest sport here domestically, but internationally, Formula One racing is huge. It's a very big property, and good on Apple for getting the rights to something that could bring a lot more eyes to Apple. And as we know, Apple's marketing isn't the greatest. So getting an international audience pool like Formula One is a big get for them.
Yeah, it's a 5-year deal worth $750 million. So that's got to give you some sort of insight of just how big F1 is outside of it. And this is kind of an attempt to expand it more into, you get a lot of people, if they're into NASCAR or other type of racing, they're checking out probably F1 and other things than that, but it has been as big of a hit here in the States as it is internationally. So this could be a gateway of helping get that sport much bigger, because, F1, the largest box office for an original film this year. Yep. And it's another one where you talk about streaming. Apple has their own streaming service, but they put F1 out in theaters for a full theatrical run. It hasn't even, or it's coming close now for it to finally release on Apple TV to stream almost 3-4 months after it released. So they waited a very long time before they even put out on their service. But they also did something that I'm going to poke fun at, because it's what we've dealt with HBO Max and changing to Max and all that stuff, where they change the name of these services hoping that it's going to do something, but they just add some more confusion. So Apple TV Plus is now just Apple TV. Now, if that's a little confusing to you, it's because Apple TV is the name of their streaming device, physical streaming device. It's also the name of their apps where you can access this stuff that doesn't exactly give you access to the TV. So you could have the Apple TV app, but not have Apple TV Plus, because there's some stuff they could allow you to watch without the service. And now the service is Apple TV. So like for F1, which is going to start in 2026, you're going to be watching F1 races on the Apple TV service through your Apple TV app on your Apple TV device. Like, you have 3 different things which are related, but there's so much more you can do on the Apple TV device, because you can have Netflix and, Peacock and YouTube TV and everything else on there. But you have 3 things all named the same thing that all do different things. Like, it just feels like another HBO Max, where it just doesn't make sense why they took away the Plus from Apple TV, because even though it's just a minor thing, it sets it apart that, all right, Apple TV, this is the device. If you don't have an Apple TV, then the app is your Apple TV. And Apple TV Plus is a service.
So what you're telling me is I could have my Apple TV and have my Apple TV app open on my Apple TV, but I can't watch Apple TV if I didn't have the service.
It's crazy.
It's silly. How ridiculous does that sound? It's just like, I want to watch Apple TV through my Apple TV app on my Apple TV, but I better make sure I have Apple TV. Well, I already have Apple TV, and I have Apple TV, but I don't have Apple TV.
Wait, Apple TV costs more on Apple TV?
It's so silly and so ridiculous. Like, it sounds crazy. Full transparency, I have an Apple TV. That's my hub for all of my streaming services that I use, and it just sounds ridiculous. And it's one of those you just shake your head and question why, because you got to figure how many people are going to be confused about the fact that, oh, I've bought the Apple TV, I've downloaded the Apple TV app, but that doesn't mean I can watch Apple TV.
I need to get a subscription to Apple TV on my Apple TV to watch Apple TV?
Right. It's
we can go on forever with this stuff. It just doesn't make sense. Because, I've got the Apple TV streaming device, but I've also got the Apple TV app on, like, my Xbox and my phone and stuff. But, you need a third part for Apple TV, which is Apple TV.
Yeah. stupid.
It's
And
wild.
as much as they have issues just marketing themselves, it's just we kind of see why, or the lack of marketing. And then things like this come out, and you're just like, how are you a $1 billion company? Like,
It feels the same as we went through with HBO Max here, that you launch it as HBO Max and then you decide to change it to Max using the lesser known property that you have, because HBO is the big name, not Cinemax Max like HBO is. Then you change it to Max, and now you're back to HBO Max. Like Apple, I don't know, that eventually they could change the name back or something. They seem to be sticking pretty hard behind this, but I don't think it's a good change to have three things, unless they're planning in the next iteration to change what the Apple TV device is called and what the app is called. But right now, you've got three connected but separate things with the same name.
Yeah, it's very confusing. Does your brain hurt? My brain hurts. Like it just makes me shake my head. Yep. And I don't understand the thought process behind it. Like you said, hopefully the next generation of streaming devices they bring out gets rebranded to Apple Home or Apple something. You know what I mean? Like there's something different that they could call it that would kind of help delineate it from what it is. If they truly want to make Apple TV the service,
Apple Max, and then they just change it to Max.
Yeah, why not? Let's go for it. Let's just go all in. Let's just call it Apple HBO or something ridiculous like that. Who knows? But it's so silly.
It's just such a questionable thing. But I want to move us into our film review of this week, which is Good Fortune. So this is a new Keanu Reeves comedy, which I was really looking forward to, because past like the Bill and Ted sequel that they did, he hasn't done a whole lot of comedies. I mean, he's had bit parts in like the SpongeBob movie and a few other things, but he hasn't done a full-on comedy in a while. It's been John Wick, it's been The Matrix, it's been, a lot of heavy action, dark action films. So it was really good to see him back in a comedy. He plays the angel Gabriel, who is in charge of texting and driving. So the only thing really he's supposed to do is just show up in people's cars and tap them on the shoulder to get them to look up before something bad happens because they're texting and driving. But he's kind of bored of that. He feels like he could do more, that he wants to do more and help more people, because you get Azrael, who comes and is telling stories to all the other angels of how he changed the life of this person, and he's kind of getting jealous. Like he wants to help other people. So he ends up helping Aziz Ansari's character, Arj, to stop texting and driving, and he follows him a little bit, seeing that his life is not so good. Like he is doing all these different apps, between delivering food to like handyman services, just to try to make ends meet, but like he still can't afford a home to live in. He's living out of his car, and he's like struggling to make ends meet. And Gabriel decides, I'm going to help this guy. I'm going to give him his moment to show him that life can be better and that he should be happy with his life. And it is really funny of how he attempts to show him, like, this is what your life is going to be in like 2 years, and then this is 5, and this is 10. He's like, that's all you have to show me? Like, there's something negative that happens in every single one. And he's like, you're supposed to be showing me good stuff. And he's like, he doesn't know what to do. And it overall was a really fun film to me. Like, it didn't hit hard as much with a ton of like laugh after laugh after laugh, but I got some good laughs out of this film.
Oh, this film was funny. Like Keanu Reeves has like the perfect deadpan comedic delivery, and it really shines through in this film. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about his cameo in not his cameo, but his character in Toy Story 4 as well, as like one of the recent more comedy ones, where he's just the over the top Evel Knievel type character.
Duke Kaboom.
Duke Kaboom was his name. Yeah, it was. He's so good at comedy. Like, people forget just how like good he is in that genre, because John Wick and The Matrix are just like epic film franchises where he gets to be this awesome action star. Which, who knew the guy that played in Bill and Ted's the Bill and Ted films could be an action star? But he's had an unbelievable career and an amazing career resurgence over the past 10 plus years with John Wick, bringing him back to the forefront, but getting him back into comedy in a role like this was so good and so well done. Like, he's hilarious in this movie, because like you said, he has these ambitions of helping people and doing more, and he kind of hyper focuses on Arj because, he sees some of the texts that he was getting ready to send when he saved him, and he was just like, he's the perfect person I can help. This guy that's just down on his luck, I can show him his life's worth living, and it kind of becomes his mission throughout this film, and it sets off this really fun chain of events where, Arj goes to work for Seth Rogen's character, Jeff, who's like this uber wealthy multimillionaire investor who has this ginormous mansion in the Hollywood Hills. And, becomes envious of that type of life. And, he sees the work and, just Arj just goes through just a comedy of errors and just awful things that could happen to him on a day-to-day basis where, they pull in some real life, stuff that happens to people like on an everyday basis where like he's a delivery driver whose order doesn't like they close the shop that he's trying to pick up an order from and they cancel his order and he's calling the guy like, hey, don't cancel this. Like don't cancel the tip because I don't make any money. I've been sitting out here for 2 hours. And then the guy's like, oh, I won't. And then he hangs up and he gets the alert that he canceled the order anyway. And you're just like, man, I just wasted 2 hours. Like, what are we doing? Like just bringing some like very real situations into this movie that I really think brings that authenticity like to the story that they're trying to tell.
Yeah, it tries to bring some real heart into it because it's showing the struggles of what modern day people are going with, of what delivery drivers, how little they make from everything, and tips and reviews are very high to it, but just the struggles like people with like minimum wage jobs or so have of trying to have a life because you have, the love interest in Elena played by Keke Palmer, which I kind of wanted more of her in the film just because she's so fantastic. She works at this Home Depot like store that Arj ends up working at and meeting her, and they kind of kick off a little bit of a flame and stuff, but it also kicks off kind of the biggest problem in the movies because, he ends up doing a job cleaning the garage and reorganizing the garage of Jeff, and he talks his way into becoming Jeff's assistant, which, Jeff ends up giving him a company credit card for expenses, and, he's hyping up to Jeff that I've got this date, and I'm going to go, let's go take her to this restaurant. Is it expensive? Oh, no, it's fine. Well, to a millionaire investor, it's not, but when he shows up and the bill's like $400, he uses the credit card, which gets him in trouble with her because he can't sustain like a life, which she's not asking for that life, but he's wanting to do things and give things, but it gets him fired and his car gets towed and just everything falls apart at that point to where Gabriel's like, you know what? I'm going to show you that rich lifestyle isn't all what it's cracked up to be, because the point is supposed to show him that here is a look at the other side of people who don't have to worry, and you'll want to go back to your life because you'll see your life's worth living. And we've seen in the trailer, and the funniest part is like, yeah, I'm showing him that this life isn't going to solve all your problems. And, well, it seems to have solved most of his all of his problems, and he doesn't want to go back.
Right,
he doesn't want to swap back, and that's the big crux of the movie is that Arj has to want to return to his life to go back to it, and that causes all the problems because he's like, no, I have it on easy street. I have all the money in the world. I don't have to stress. I have a mansion. I don't have to worry about a thing. Why would I want to go back?
Right, and it seems so silly, but it's like, it's literally what happens with people that like could happen with people that have a bunch of money like that. You know what I mean? Where it's just like, oh, it's just such a neat way of like showing it on film was the pool heater going out, and it's just like, oh, it's going to cost like $30,000 to fix this pool heater. And he's like, oh, that's fine. Okay. Do what you got to do. Like, it's not a small.
Most of us
have been like, well, I guess I don't have a pool anymore, but like, he's just like, it's fine. Go ahead and fix it. No worries. What's $30,000? And it's just, it's a really fun, like, social story of, like, I'm trying to find the best way to explain it because you see how easy it could be when you have money that you can use to solve all of your problems. And obviously everybody dreams of being, rich and what we would do if we had that obscene amount of money and what we would do with it. But you get kind of the flip side of it too, where not only does Arj go and live the lavish life, you get Jeff, who's very much if you want to call him a nepo baby, where the running joke from the trailer is like, where he talks about he came from nothing, but his dad was an orthopedic surgeon and his mom was an attorney for a major company. Like, he wasn't wanting for anything growing up, but like now he has to go and live Arj's life, and you see all the stuff that he goes through. But what I think really helps nail some of the stuff in this movie is Gabriel's role in this, and the fact that, he's stepping out of his bounds as an angel, and it gets him in trouble where he gets fired because he's interfering too much and he's not doing the simple things that he needs to do, because Gabriel's very much an entry-level angel trying to work his way up his, angel hierarchy ladder too, to get to a point of an Azrael where he can be an angel for more important things that he thinks is more important, making real differences in people's lives and not just saving them from texting and driving. So he loses his ability as an angel, and he has to start living in the real world too. And I think that's where a lot of the real extra oomph in this movie comes from, his interactions as being human and some of the levity that he adds and just the joy that he finds in life in some cases, and then realizing just how hard it is to be a human. Like it's I think his character arc is my favorite by far in this entire story, because he's just so brilliant and so good and written so well in this film.
Yeah, Keanu is the glue of this film. Like, he overshadows Arj's story a lot, just because Keanu is like, Arj is kind of the same type of character that Aziz Ansari plays a lot. Like, there's very similarities to a lot of it. So you get that connection too, but it really is seeing everything through Gabriel's eyes, because he is kind of like, not exactly dumb to it, but he just doesn't know what it's like to be human and to struggle and stuff. And yeah, when he becomes human, there's a really funny diner scene where he's trying food for the first time and he's trying to get him to try a cheeseburger, and he, like, when do I know when to swallow? It's like, you'll know. And then he gets handed a chicken nugget, and the childlike face that you get from Keanu when he tries a chicken nugget, he's like, oh, if you like that, you try the milkshake. And he goes on this just like beautiful spiel about how the strawberries, this berry, of how just amazing and great this fruit is, and not knowing just how it was. And then Jeff's like, I mean, that's a chocolate milkshake, but you do you. Like, that just works so well when we got that kind of childlike, just not knowing of what to do, because we even get the joke that he shows up to the, Keke Palmer's character's trying to get a union going at the Home Depot like store to, make lives better for people, because they're not making that much money and they're struggling and stuff. And he shows up in support, but he's just rambling on about stuff that all of them are like, who are you? Do you work here? Oh, no, am I not supposed to be back here? Like, oh.
And then he gets escorted out.
But it's just that childlike innocence that you get out of a guy who's, 50, 60 years old, and you get that childlike wonder, and then he has to start getting a job, and he works as a dishwasher and working with Felipe and that relationship and stuff. Like, he discovers alcohol and more, and it's like, it's just that childlike that you see in Keanu, like, just made this movie so special because of that, because we were laughing at so much stuff because of Keanu from all that.
It's so smartly written, and you're reminding me of probably my two favorite scenes in the film. One of which is the speech he gives at the meeting where they're talking about trying to rally support for becoming a union, where he just talks about money should be spent on fun things, and like, just go see the film for that speech alone, because it's so funny. But one of my favorite, like, that is so real moments comes when he gets his first paycheck as a dishwasher, and he's working with this guy Felipe, who's like running the store, running the place where he's washing the dishes at. Place. Yeah. And he's like, Felipe, something's wrong with my check. And he's like, what's going on? He's like, I'm supposed to make this much money, but then they take some money for this, and then they take some money to just talking about how we get our checks just taxed to death at some point, especially when you're not making that much money. And then he was just like, he's like, yeah, some of this goes to the local government, some of this goes to the federal government. And he just looks and he's like, that's not fair.
I can't live off of this.
I can't live off of it. It's just so real, because it's just like so many people, like, that's the obvious part of it, but it's done in such a humorous way that it just really worked for me. And it was one of my favorite scenes in the whole film. I'm like, yes, why do we have to have such high taxes? So much of our money that just goes like back out of our pockets when we earn it. It's just so It's so wild. There's definitely some playful commentary in this film that's taking pointed jabs at people in power, and
even
like,
poking fun at themselves. Like they know they're
Right.
like Seth Rogen and that they're rich and stuff,
Right.
and they're trying to portray, the irony that a bunch of millionaires made a film about people struggling.
Right.
They kind of poke at that. Like we know that
We know
we
it's
have it well off, and there's so many people struggling, and that there should be about, especially like Jeff's boardroom speech and stuff that really connects on that. And if you watch a studio, there is some kind of like parallels in between a few things in that as well. But yeah, it really tries to get to the heart that you see that there's such this large gap between the wealthy and the ones who are making them wealthy, because they're out there grunting and doing all the work for very little pay while everyone at the top gets to make all the money. And they make a good commentary about that, which, really touches on the heart and the soul of the film there. And like, I did want to see a little bit more out of Arj and Elena's relationship, because we got it in bits and pieces. It serves like a point here, and then they kind of move away from it. Then it serves a point, and they move away from it. Because Keke Palmer was really,
she's amazing.
Just has this great chemistry and was really working well in it, but she didn't get as much as I kind of hoped she would have in that, because it was less of her kind of giving. I mean, she gives Arj a little bit of that nudge and the push about his real life, but it really is Keanu as the heart and the soul and the glue of this film, and just that childlike wonder of him not knowing what to do, but also starting to see stuff come together in the end of like people he saved from, texting and driving and other things like that. It was overall really fun, but like without Keanu, I don't think it would have been quite as good as it was without him really giving a little bit of Bill and Ted type of his deadpan humor in there, but he just does it so well. And like just hearing him say chicken nuggies still makes me laugh.
It is hilarious, and part of the through line for the film that's really going to drive that home is like what it like 6 months from now, when you think of Good Fortune, you're going to think chicken nuggies because of how he just says it and how much it means to him in the film. And it's so funny, so well done. I got so much enjoyment out of watching this. Like it's not a perfect film by any means. Like it's paced pretty well. It's got a good, pretty simple overall story that it follows. Mm-hmm. The humor is really the driving point in this film. Like you said, Keanu, if they didn't have Keanu Reeves in this film, probably wouldn't be as good as it was, because he gives just an awesome performance in this, and he's just so good. And I'm glad that he's back in this kind of comedic role that really works well for him. I got a lot of enjoyment out of the film because he's such a bright spot in it.
I don't know why it just popped in my head. But I talk about the childlike wonder of his humor, but like when he first meets Arj, standing kind of in the parking lot of the Denny's, and he's like, "I'm an angel." He's like, "What? See the wings?" And just the way he just the childlike way he's pointing out his little bitty wings, because it's kind of the point that you've got to become a better angel to get promoted and you get bigger wings and stuff. But it was just the childlike way he said, "See the wings?" And it's just a fun vehicle to see him doing something other than, which I love the action-packed stuff that he's done with The Matrix and John Wick and everything, but to see him back into doing comedy was just so much fun to see him doing comedy fully, instead of like just being a cameo or a bit part in another film. Like being in a whole film doing a comedy was just, I want to see him do more comedies.
Yeah, for sure. But Good Fortune is a film that is a fun social play on just life in general and the struggles that so many normal Americans face, but it's done in such a way that it's got heart, it's got charm, it's paced so well. The writing on it, the dialogue is really funny. I am so glad that Keanu Reeves is back in a comedic role in this after being in so many action films. It's good to see him back in a comedic role like this, and he's really a bright spot in this film. I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. Like I said, it's not a perfect movie by any means, but my God, he makes this movie so fun and so enjoyable that I probably wouldn't have had as much fun if it weren't him kind of being the heart of this film. Even though he's not technically the overall central character of the movie, he still carries so much weight in this film that makes it such an enjoyable experience. And for that, I'm giving it a 7.5.
I'm right there with you. Pretty much everything you said. I'm giving it a 7.5 as well, because Keanu does overshadow Aziz Ansari's Arj. Like, he gives a decent performance, but it does feel kind of more of the kind of same character that he's played a lot. And so when Keanu steps in and does that, and Jeff is kind of a similar thing that Seth Rogen has done a lot. So it's more about letting Keanu shine and doing. Keke Palmer was a lot of fun. I was wishing she would get a little bit more in there because it borders on that of trying to give a little dramatic emotion to it, but they don't ever let it dip too low. They try to keep the comedic and the highs, but still touching on serious points with, those who are not as well off as others and being happy with your life or how you can change or not always being wanting and striving for what everybody else has. And it's got a pretty decent message. It could have been a little bit better, but as you mentioned, without Keanu, it probably would have been much lower rating on that. He really gave a childlike, fun, whimsical performance that was just a joy to watch.
For sure. He's so fun in this. And that's not even, like, we went the entire review and didn't even talk about Sandra Oh being in it, who's kind of Martha, the boss angel there, who's kind of like the head honcho, and she's got some bright spots in this film as well, even though she's in it in a pretty limited capacity, because this does really focus on Arj, Jeff, and, in Keanu Reeves' character in this film, and it doesn't, it really hyper-focuses on the three of them and their interactions throughout most of this, but she also gets a little bit of love from me, too, because she's just an amazing actress as well, and I love seeing her in pretty much everything she's in as well. But, yeah, definitely wanted more out of Keke Palmer in this because she's so talented as an actress and is wonderful in so many different things. But, yeah, great movie, man. It was such a good film to go see. I'm glad we went and saw this one because it was definitely worth a watch, and so good to have Keanu back in comedy.
Yeah, so Good Fortune is in theaters right now. Go check it out if you want to see Keanu doing more comedy, if you've just seen a good laugh. Like, it's got a solid story to it, but you're mainly going to go into this wanting to see Keanu and all the ridiculous things that they try, because you could really tell that they're trying to see what is the most ridiculous things we could have him do and say that works in the movie, but makes it like really humorous because it's Keanu Reeves delivering it with his deadpan kind of style. So it was a lot of fun. Go check it out. We are now partnered with Dubby Energy. Dubby is a clean energy drink to give you focus with no crash or jitters like other energy drinks.
Dubby contains vitamins, amino acids, and 150 milligrams of caffeine. It also features 0 calories, no sugar, no fillers, and no artificial dyes.
From Dragonade and S'mores to Push and Punch and Galaxy Grenade, Dubby has a wide range of flavors for you to choose from.
Use code WBTP to save 10% off your Dubby Energy orders and look for a direct link in the audio and video descriptions. So now I want to move us into our TV review of the week. We have Season 2 of DC's Peacemaker. So this is the first season of Peacemaker that's technically fully canon in the new DCU. And I say fully canon because, there's been some loose speculation on what the first season of Peacemaker was going to mean, since it's really the main character that's really rolled over from the previous iteration of the DCU into the new James Gunn DC universe. Well, they get that right out of the gate, retconning some of the stuff that happened because, notoriously, spoiler if you haven't seen season 1, it ends with Peacemaker interacting with the Justice League, specifically Henry Cavill and, Gal Gadot and
Jason Momoa's Aquaman. Those jokes.
Those jokes, which will go down in infamy. But they kind of retcon it out of the gate with the new Superman and the Justice Gang. So if you've seen, the new Superman film, those characters appear in it, and they kind of retcon it by having it retold as him interacting with them instead. But this really kicks off a second season here of Peacemaker where you get kind of the fallout from that, where Peacemaker's really just trying to make a difference in the world. That's kind of been his big spiel, and it kind of jumps off with him trying to join the Justice Gang, essentially, where he goes and does this interview, and as predictably as it can in a comedy action, series, goes absolutely horribly. And, it kind of sets off a chain of events where Peacemaker, who's just trying to find his way as a hero in the world, and, he figures, I'm getting no respect here. Maybe it's time for me to look for respect elsewhere.
Yeah, so needless to say, we're going to have plenty of spoilers with this going over the whole season 2. There's a lot of stuff that happens that we have to talk about, so if you don't want to be spoiled by it, as always, go to our recap at the end. But this season was quite a bit different than I was expecting because, as you mentioned, we came in that Peacemaker Season 1 was all part of the old DCU, and that they were going to roll it into the DCEU, and we were all curious how exactly they were going to do that. And we kind of got word and knew that it was going to kind of mess with the interdimensional doors and stuff like that, and we kind of got that in Superman as well. So I came into it thinking, all right, he's just going to go into an alternate universe, and that's going to be the new DCU, and he'll just stay in there, and that'll be it. But no, they did the retcon and made that universe that we were already in be a part of the DCU or DCEU. So that was a little bit like you had kind of an easy out that you could have just made it a dimensional door that he went through and stayed and didn't come back. But I mean, they played with that well. There's a lot more dramatics with this season because, you know, Chris Smith, Peacemaker, he's kind of struggling with his life. Like he's still struggling with that he killed Rick Flag Jr. and that his dad is still after him of wanting to make him pay for, you know, killing his son and everything. But he doesn't know where he fits in. Like he's kind of emotional about, well, I was just killing people to kill people no matter what. I didn't care how many people I killed. And now he's kind of dealing with that fallout of it, that he's actually doesn't want to be that kind of Peacemaker who just kills to kill. And he's trying to, because we actually get, I think, more plain clothes Chris than we get Peacemaker in this series and stuff, because he's trying to deal with that. And we also get that a little bit of love story was building between him and Harcourt, but we get a lot of drama and stuff behind that. But, you know, most of the season revolves around that. You know, we knew that his dad had this dimensional door, and that's where all the Peacemaker helmets and other stuff was kept. And, you know, we got that close to the end of season 1. But that dimensional door plays a huge part in this series because it leads to so many different worlds and everything else, but it also leads to an alternate universe where his dad is still alive and his brother is still alive as a grown man, played by, you know, David Denham, who for most people will remember him as Roy from The Office, gets to play his brother because if you remember in season 1, his brother was killed as a child.
Yep.
So this is the first time we get to see the adult brother, and it really affects, you know, Chris on how he's treated and feels in his actual universe and how he feels and treated and what he has available in this new universe.
What I think they do such a brilliant job of in this season is kind of doing the long story with that alternate dimension that he kind of wants to stay in, right? So he pretty much gets out of, you know, the pickle that he's in where he's in his normal universe. He's got Rick Flag Sr. coming after him heavy. Like that's the emphasis of the season is Rick Flag is hell-bent on getting revenge on Peacemaker, bringing him in, you know, just basically trying to kill him this entire season. And, you know, now you've got Rick Flag Sr. is the head of Argus. It's not Amanda Waller running the show. It is Rick Flag is fully in charge of Argus now, and he's using the full resources of his power as the leader of Argus to kind of apprehend Peacemaker by any means here. But it's still funny because he's trying to do that, but he's also still trying to do it legally.
It's almost like he's trying to be a good guy, but he's not.
Right, and he's walking a really fine line as Rick Flag in this, and Frank Grillo is just awesome. I love Frank Grillo as an actor, and he's so good as Rick Flag in this, but you get him trying to stop Peacemaker by any means, but he kind of abandons his team to go into this alternate dimension where you see early on where he's just accepted and loved because Peacemaker is this great hero in the universe that he goes in. And probably the heaviest spoiler we can give here is there's a fight very early on with his doppelganger in that dimension where he kills that Chris so he can go and assume the role of Chris there, and he tries to blend in, and you see how he's different personality-wise from the other Chris, and they kind of play with that throughout the season. But him just basically saying, you know, hey, I'm loved here, my brother's here, my dad's alive here, and I'm a beloved hero here. I'm going to stay here. And I love the story that they tell about what that dimension really is throughout that season.
God wild.
Because it takes a very, very dark, heavy turn later in the season, by the end of the season, where you find out exactly what kind of universe that is and what is happening. Because you see Chris dealing with things very much in his own personal bubble in a vacuum while not seeing the overall bigger picture, which kind of goes to talk about how, like, Chris is as a character, very oblivious to a lot of things in the real world. That's heavy on point here in season 2.
There's a big joke about there's a mural that basically paints a picture of exactly what this world is, but they make fun of it like, how did I never see that or notice that before? Like, it's very obvious if you see that what type of world this is. But yeah, that was a moment when it happened, because we won't spoil exactly what happened there, but you know, you have a character who is out and you see people reacting to this character and it starts going really negatively and you're like, oh, okay, that's what's wrong with this world. But that joke, that's what had me laughing, that joke of how, you know, because you do get some of the other characters who were trying to bring Chris back. Like he's kind of making ultimatums with everybody, especially with Hardcore. Like, did that night on the boat mean anything to you? And she says no, because she's dealing with her own stuff. She's used to being a loner. She can't get, she's been blacklisted from any jobs, and that's all she knows is to be a spy and be this agent and stuff. And she's having a really hard time by picking bar fights and doing a lot of stuff, and she's never been one to kind of deal with her emotions and everything else. So she straight up tells him no. So he just wants to leave because the Hardcore in the alternate universe, they were in love. And they had a relationship together, and he kind of talked to her, and there was a thing that, well, if you could be this type of guy, then we could give it another try. So he's kind of going back and forth like, all right, I need to know from you, Hardcore, I need to know from everybody else, is this anything going to happen here, or I'm just going to go live in that, you know, alternate reality. And you do get kind of mingling back and forth of them trying to come after him, but it does get some emotional weight behind the character, because he's dealing with, he hates his own reality, almost like Good Fortune. You're dealing with Arj, like not liking his own life, so he wants to live this other life, and it's very similar with Peacemaker. It's kind of where after watching Good Fortune and seeing the finale, it's like, oh, there's a lot of parallels between this, because Chris is very, I don't want to live in this world anymore. Everything is dark. I'm not accepted anywhere. Yeah. And then he has to finally realize what he did have and everything in that. But it was a fun season overall. It was kind of weird because we did get more emotion and stuff with it, but it did leave a little controversy with the finale, because a lot of people, which I've seen, and I've got my own feelings on it as well, where the finale left everything, because James Gunn said right now there are no plans for a Peacemaker season 3. Yeah. His story, whatever happens with him and these characters, we'll explore in some other DCU properties, but right now this is it for Peacemaker.
Which is crazy where they leave it off, right? And it's got a lot of people bummed out about it, because it's very much a cliffhanger-ish finale that at this point, knowing that they may not go back and explore it fully is a little bit of a cop-out, in my opinion, because you leave something very open-ended, but they do introduce 2 really cool things that are potentially, according to James Gunn, going to play bigger roles in the DCU moving forward. And we'll get to those in a minute, but I wanted to shine a little bit of a bright light on the band that's featured heavily in this season is a local band to Cincinnati, a band called Foxy Shazam, that they go by a different name in the show that they use for them, that do like most of the music, until we get Foxy Shazam actually performing in the finale in that final musical scene that they do. Phenomenal band, amazing band. And, you know, they have even the theme song for season 2 with a brand new dance number. It's not the same up-tempo, intense, like hard rock, like epic season 1 intro, and a lot of people have strong opinions about how the season 2 intro's different from that, and it's maybe not as good or as catchy as the other one, but still a good song, great band that does get featured in the heavy end. And I do want to give, you know, our local band Foxy Shazam a little bit of love there, which so awesome that James Gunn knows who they are and brought them in, and apparently he's a fan of theirs too. So that was really cool to see them get a spotlight like this, and it was just it made me proud as a guy who's followed that band's career for a long time, seeing them when they were playing shows in front of like 10 to 15 people, like seeing them really like blow up and be used in a property like this is really cool.
And the other side of the spectrum, you get a band, Nelson, that maybe not everybody knows who they are, making a cameo appearance in there as well, because, you know, that boat ride, or time on the boat that Chris is referencing to Harcourt is these band cruises and stuff that he ends up taking her on. And it plays a big part of their story in two different ways, which was really well done. And if you look closely in one of those scenes, that James Gunn has a cameo in the back of the crowd and stuff. So he did throw himself in there, but it's not, because there's a lot of people who just want to hate on James Gunn, especially as Superman, because everything he posted had him in it for Superman. Like, he wrote, he directed it. He's the head of DC. Like, if he's going to put himself into some stuff, he can't. It wasn't egregious that he's just like putting the camera in his face big, and you have to look for him to see him. Like, it's not something in this one that he's like forcing himself to stand out in. But yeah, it was a really interesting season because it tried to get a little more hard into it. Like, you had, Danielle Brooks, still fantastic. I've loved her ever since Orange is the New Black and everything. It's being Chris's best friend and trying to be the one to talk sense into him. And you get some kind of emotional, heartfelt stuff between them, but also some silly stuff because she's trying to start her own security business and she's getting her advertisements out in different magazines. But there's one person who calls her to set up a job, but he thinks it's for something else. And that's just kind of a hysterical scene with her and Vigilante sitting on a porch, and he's listening to her phone call, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it sounds like he's asking for this." And she's like, "Oh no."
It's so funny.
Like, there's some really fun bits into it, but it does try to add a little more drama, and to even get a Sad Eagly and other stuff in there. And you get Michael Rooker, who's appeared in pretty much everything James Gunn has done. He's back yet again, trying to track down Eagly and take it out on this weird Native American guy who's just kind of all over the place. And it's really funny that he thinks he's taken out Eagly, but then he gets overran by all the different eagles and stuff. And
it's fun.
There's some fun, like, kind of different cameos, because we also got at least one character that we didn't expect we were going to see, especially so soon after, the DCEU kind of rebooting. And a big spoiler on it, we get Lex showing up. We get Nicholas Hoult as Lex, shows up in here. We know that they were filming at the same time, so Superman and Peacemaker were at the same sound stages and studios and filming at the same time, and we wondered if we were going to get a Superman cameo and everything else, but we did get a Lex, which plays a pretty big importance and can be setting up for something pretty big in the future, because with the Superman movie, they were dealing with their own interdimensional portals, but they had a hard time keeping them open and doing that. But now they have these basic Monsters Inc. type of doorways that they can go and visit all these alternate realities. And it's kind of, I think, a good time to move into that finale and what it kind of did with it, because, we're left at a point where Chris is trying to really make his life for himself in that new reality, and he does finally figure out what is wrong with this reality. But we get scenes with his dad and his brother that really shock and change him, and he has a breakdown, and he just doesn't know what to do with himself. He'd just rather put himself in prison. And so, he kind of turns himself in, while the rest of the group is kind of taken over by Argus, and they're having to help them. And they're going through all these interdimensional doorways, trying to find something. You don't know right away what they're trying to find, but you get some wild worlds where there's gigantic skull creatures where they're screaming and yelling, and they're like, nope, not going to check out that world. Or they find one that kind of looks like Willy Wonka, but then these little alien creatures come out and just devastate and overrun them. And it's kind of a fun play with that. They don't spend a whole lot of time with it, but which is disappointing in a way, that you thought that maybe there'd be more importance to these other, because throughout the whole series, there's this alien creature who comes in to dispose of bodies of these alien rats. And there's a little bit back and forth, like Chris is yelling at him and telling him off, and others are trying to say hi to him, and it's just an alien creature. But
it's a funny gag.
We never visit that world.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe we would, but we do find out in the end what exactly they were trying to do with those doors.
Yeah, you get this set up. So there's two major things coming out of this season that kind of frustrates people who were hoping for a little bit of a follow-up for season 3, of a potential season 3 for Peacemaker. But you get the full circle with Chris, who eventually kind of snaps out of it, and he's ready to kind of do the right thing and go and be the leader, and realizes that he kind of is the glue that holds that group together, and they come up and they form this group that's called Checkmate, which is, if you're a fan of the DC comics and know what it is, Checkmate is kind of like the Agents of Shield of the MCU. It's kind of like an equivalent of that. It's called Checkmate, where it's like this private organization that aims to do good in the world and things like that. It's kind of like a Shield-esque, not quite Shield.
Yeah, trying to be an anti-Argus in this world.
Yeah, it's just kind of trying to be the antithesis of that, and they form that group, but it ends with Chris being captured and being sent through a door into this world, and you're like, what happens? He gets left, and that world turns out to be what's known as Salvation in the DC comics, which DC is a metahuman planet that can sustain metahuman life, but they find a way that can really seal it off from the rest of the world, and that's going to play a huge crucial role in DC moving forward, because James Gunn has come out and said that it's going to play a big role in Man of Tomorrow, which is going to be the next Superman film, and that's going to be, the whole Lex versus Superman thing again. What's Lex's involvement with Salvation? He's the one that gave Rick Flag the idea to go looking there. And, that sets up the whole thing where Chris gets kind of abandoned in Salvation. He's isolated from the group, and you don't know, is there going to be a rescue mission to go save Chris? Do they know what happened? That's kind of the ambiguity of the finale, where we just don't know what's going to happen moving forward, because he gets taken and he gets dropped off on this planet and left there. And you're like, what is going to happen? What else is on that planet? Because you hear these ominous noises in the background. Like, what is going on this planet that they dropped him off in, that these supposed metahumans are going to be dropped off there, and what is the plan for that planet? And it's got a lot of implications moving for DC going forward, but it really leaves this unknown for Peacemaker and what the future of that character is going to be, and this group, because like you said, they set up this group called Checkmate. Are they going to be more involved in other DC properties? Are they going to play more roles there, like that organization helping in other cases? Like, how is it all going to tie together? There's so many questions we have to have answered now.
Yeah, and we got Flag kind of going full villain in the final episode, because as they're going through the doors and people are dying, he's seen laughing and cheering with the rest of his coast. He's got kind of part of Lex's group with him, handling these doors and stuff. So you get a few more other side characters that show up from Superman. But yeah, his plan is to rid the Earth of metahumans, and he wants to put them on Salvation on their own, and he doesn't care about it. Like, it's a prison, but he doesn't care about having them locked up. As soon as they dump him off in that world, they close the door, they move the door, and they can never get back. Like, he just wants to get rid of metahumans, and he's using Chris as the kind of bait or just an experiment to see exactly what this world is like. So we don't know kind of what this world is going to be, what it's going to introduce. Are there some already metahuman heroes or villains that Chris is going to meet on that planet that could play something? And then that is where it left a lot of people just feeling like that was it, because it spent a lot of time lightly setting stuff up for that, finale, and it just kind of ended. It wasn't the biggest thing, but also knowing that there's not a season 3 and it's supposed to conclude and move in through other properties, it's like, well, you left a lot. You've got Checkmate out there. You've got Lex and Flag. You have what happens to Chris. There's a whole lot to explore. Is it going to take 5 movies for us to get all the answers? Because we know Supergirl is up next, and he said it's kind of a Guardians of the Galaxy type of movie. It's a space type of adventure with her, less on Earth, more in outer space. Could Supergirl end up meeting Chris on Salvation or helping there? Or do we not see anything until Man of Tomorrow and we get some answers there? So it just leaves it very ambiguous. Like, we don't know what's going to happen in this character. So if you invested 2 seasons, plus you have Suicide Squad for, Peacemaker's character, we just don't know what the future holds for this character. And It's a little bit of we get, if you're going to integrate him into other movies and stuff, but you left a big cliffhanger of stuff where he is finally starting to get happy and accept his life and accept who he is, and then you just throw him in another dimension. It's like, okay, and that's it. That's all we have left.
Yeah, it's problematic, right? And it's got a lot of people feeling a certain way, which we're big proponents of let's see the whole picture, right? Well, let's see what they do with it, because I really want them to really have some, as people who have invested time into 2 seasons of a show, like are big fans of the show like we are. Where does this go? Where are we going? Like, is it going to pivot more into movies? Like, we don't know what's up really TV wise with DC, because they seem to be hyper focused on movies. Like, we don't know too much about TV properties other than, we got Lanterns coming up, which we don't anticipate is going to deal with anything that's going on here. You got the potential Booster Gold series that probably isn't going to delve into it either. So they may be done with dealing with these characters on the TV side of it, and we got to wait for whatever they're going to do movie wise to kind of continue on with their story, which is a choice, I guess. But he didn't completely close the door on a third season, but it seems like whatever in the next few years that could be explored with those characters is going to happen on the film side of things, which mixed bag, but we'll see what the stories that they tell are and how they're integrated into them. And hopefully we get some answers, because like you said, there's so much more they can explore here, and we don't know where they're going with it. So we'll just have to see how it plays out.
It's like, how does a Peacemaker character, because we know he was ultra violent, but he's trying to change himself. How does that play into something like Man of Tomorrow, Superman? He's kind of the complete opposite of what Superman tries to be in things. And, he's trying to change his character and who he is, but can he fully change that? He's kind of the Punisher-esque of DC here, of how he approaches. Not exactly, because Punisher's doing it out of loss and everything else, and he's just one that's... It's more about the ultra violence of how he handles things is very similar to the Punisher in that way. But there's so much with him and Harcourt and with Checkmate and with Argus and with Flag, and it's just so much to resolve. And if it's only going to happen in other properties for a while, it just feels like I would have rather it ended a little bit better, so that if we don't get much of a follow-up, that it's okay, because you left it and like, what in the world happens now? It feels like that's a season 3, but we're not going to see same thing like Tron Ares. You set up like we're going into 4, and we're more than likely not going to get that. Yeah, we potentially could get Peacemaker season 3 down the line, but you don't know if that's
when or if
3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, and we don't know how many films and TV shows and everything else that you might get them intertwined in before we get that, if he ever goes back to it. It's just, it did leave a little bit of like, it was fine, but it just left way too much up in the air for another season not to be happening.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of meat on the bone there, but overall, this season was fun. Like, I enjoyed the heftiness, I enjoyed the heaviness of the stories, where this is kind of like a yin and yang from season 1, which is more in the humor. And there's plenty of humor in this season as well. Like, there's a lot of that, because we haven't even talked about, John Economos's character in this. A lot is still this overly jaded, like just goofball genius character.
Does not know how to distract people at all.
Not at all, but there's some funniness with that. There's, Tim Meadows of SNL fame showing up as Langston Fillery, who's got bird blindness, but he's just this goofball, eccentric agent as well. And
bird blindness is a very serious issue.
It's a very serious thing, but you also have, Adrian's story in this, where he's, dealing with it, and there's some very hilarious stuff with his home and his relationship with his mom, and
his secret room where he has all this stuff stashed in it.
That room is insane once you get to it, but also that, and then just the fine performance of Robert Patrick in this too, like as his dad, who is in this alternate dimension that's completely flipped on his head, and you get kind of this almost touching, heartwarming sentiment from him by the end of the season, before what happens there happens. That I won't spoil you. I want you to go watch it and see what happens, but he kind of has like a little bit of a full circle moment in here too, where it's just like, oh, this is the total antithesis reality of what we're living in, because his character was very much not redeemable in the universe that we were living in, and you were kind of cheering when he got his comeuppance in that because of how awful of a human being he was, but you get kind of the exact opposite of that in this universe, and it's just like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, I get where he's coming from, and you kind of get that full circle moment. But yeah, like, he gave a great performance in the limited time he was in this show too, and Leota is amazing. Danielle Brooks is an incredible actress too. It really shines bright in the scenes that she gets. Like, there's some really good performances in this season issues with the finale and the way they wrap up the story aside, it was really fun. It was a good story. You got a good mix of humor, a lot more heart and heaviness in it than we were anticipating, but the humor and the charm of it is still there as well.
Yeah, I want to show some love to Jennifer Holland with her Harcourt because the first season, you know, she's in a relationship. She's married to James Gunn and stuff. So you have a lot of people wondering, well, she's just got this role because, you know, she's in a relationship with James and stuff. But she really showed in this season why she was the right choice for Harcourt, because she plays that hard character really well. But then you get to start to see the cracks and the emotion and the heart and her feelings, while also still trying to still be the hardened person she is. And then you get the alternate version of her in that other dimension that is much softer and, you know, carries herself a little different. And she really showed that she was the right choice for Harcourt in this season, that she was really, really good. And even John Cena got to show off a little bit more of, you know, got the silly and goofy and over the top stuff, but got to try to show some emotion and heart and everything in there. But I wanted to show Jennifer Holland some love because she did great. Prove that she was the right choice for Harcourt, even though there's some fans out there that will probably still go on the attack as the internet does. She did a fantastic job this season.
Yeah, go touch some grass. She was phenomenal in the show. I enjoy her work in this. She's in other things too, guys. It's not just because she's married to James Gunn. Like, she's good in other stuff that she does too. Just, you know, she is phenomenal as Harcourt, and I can't imagine anyone else playing her.
Yep. So Peacemaker Season 2 was a fun season overall. You got to see some more depth to these characters. You got to have more emotion. We got the retcon and everything to bring it into the DCEU, which I thought could have been done a different way and probably a better way other than just making the quick, immediate cut in the intro and stuff. But I thought it was a solid season, minus the issues with the finale and how it decided to end up. It didn't end in the most solid way because we don't know if we're ever going to see a season 3 and when we're going to see these characters again. I'm going to give it a solid 7 overall because it does have a few issues. I mean, it's only 8 episodes. They try to go through a lot of stuff, but it takes a little bit to fully build to where it was going to go, and especially that alternate universe, it took a while, which the payoff was fun, but to really think that Chris is that kind of non-observant to be in that alternate universe for long he was and not see everything that was going on. It's like it stretched it a little bit, but it was still a fun season overall.
Yeah, I'm landing a little bit ahead of that. I'm giving it a 7.5 again, much like I did with Good Fortune, but it's still a really solid story. You get to see them really expand upon themselves as characters in this season. You get to dive in a little bit more. They get a little more emotional depth. You get them really going through, you know, just trying to grow as people, as humans, and find their place in the world. And like, I think they do a really good job of it. It does stretch it a little bit too long to get to that. I really wish they'd have gotten that next to last episode, maybe an episode or 2 ahead of it, because it does feel like it kind of lulls a little bit in the middle of the season and really picks up in the back half of the last couple episodes, which are phenomenal episodes. And, you know, for that I have to knock it a little bit because it does kind of lull a little bit in there. But if you're a fan of this, you know it's going to be violent and gory and, you know, just ultra violent, absurd, obscene, you know, just fun humor.
Not for kids.
Definitely not a family show for sure, but you know that if you've seen the first season anyway. So it really dives into that into much greater depth in this season. Like, I still enjoy season 1 overall more than I did season 2. Season 2 was a really solid follow-up. Issues with the finale aside and what it means for those characters moving forward with the rest of the DCEU at this point, but like, I still got a lot of enjoyment out of the season, and I want to go back and watch a couple of those episodes, especially the last 2, because the last 2 were just outstanding television and really well done. Issues with how they ended the last, you know, few minutes of the episode aside, still a really solid season, and especially last couple episodes.
Yeah, and we didn't really even talk until we brought it up right here about how this is a TVMA. This goes out there, especially like early on. It really shows you because there's a scene with Chris and drugs and alcohol and a bunch of other stuff going on in his house and stuff, that this is the follow-up to Superman. Like, he says that you don't have to see Peacemaker Season 2 to understand the thing going on, but that's kind of where some of the problems lie within this, because it brings in Lex, it brings in the Justice Gang, it does set up Checkmate and Chris to have their stories continue in other properties. But if you don't watch season 2, you don't really know. And it does have some ties to Superman, which is a more family-friendly film.
Sure.
And you have this TVMA not family-friendly at all type of show. It is kind of questionable to do that, because if you are one that wants to have it all, and if you're one that, well, your kids really loved Superman, and you know that the Justice Gang is going to be in Peacemaker, and you want to let them watch it, it does beg the question, like, why did you go so heavy after Superman with something that adult?
Right, and it's definitely an interesting follow-up. I get where he's saying where you don't have to have necessarily seen it, because he says they're going to explain the importance of like the Salvation Planet in the film. So they're going to dive a little bit deeper into that, which is where I think Peacemaker will come in, obviously, because he's there. If they're going to have it, he's going to have to, you can't not show him. But for us who are kind of completionists and like to know the full picture, like, it helps us. So it's kind of a mixed bag, right? Like this is more for your hardcore fan audience that maybe casuals don't necessarily need to see.
Yeah.
See it to see how it plays into it moving forward, because he's been pretty transparent about that, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, Kimmy said, it's not for kids. Don't watch it with your kids.
Right. And James Gunn has been pretty transparent about how all of this stuff works and ties in and everything, which, like I said, I appreciate. And, it's one of those, like, you don't feel like you need to watch it. You don't have to, but go watch this. Especially if you've invested into season 1, you definitely want to see the follow-up in season 2, because it's a worthy follow-up to a really outstanding first season.
Yeah, and it's just getting curious to see how DC is going to play this, because they say they're trying their best, because they see that Marvel got themselves in a little bit of a mess. So you feel like you have to watch everything to know everything of how they have this interconnected DCEU without having to watch absolutely everything. Because, like, what happens in Man of Tomorrow, if we see Lex with one of these doors, but we don't know how he went from the doors to, from his interdimensional portals to the doors without kind of that bridge within, Peacemaker here. So it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to fully have disconnected properties that are also connected and not have to watch everything. Because, I mean, if you watch Creature Commandos, you got to see, Rick Flag Sr. in there, and he was a hero in that, for the most part, a hero in that, but he also looked a little different. They had, Frank Grillo explained, I was doing another movie, during that time. I couldn't go gray and, white like I was in Creature Commandos, because they said, again, if you're voicing and playing the character in animation, you're playing it in live action too. So we've already got 2 connected but disconnected properties in that. And it's going to be interesting to see how, as they expand with Lanterns and Supergirl and, eventually when we get another Aquaman and Wonder Woman and all that, how they're going to keep them disconnected but connected. Yeah,
and that's the tangled web that James Gunn's going to have to weave. But all episodes of season 2 of Peacemaker are available on HBO Max. Yes, it is HBO Max still. Go check it out. Let us know if you've watched the season. Let us know what you think about it. We'd love to have that conversation with you and what it can mean for the bigger picture of the DCEU. Very excited to talk about that one, but I'm glad we explored that one. That one was a fun show to watch for sure.
It was an interesting week, because I wasn't expecting, because I didn't start Peacemaker right away.
Sure.
I got a few episodes in, and then I got caught up right before the finale, but I didn't watch the finale when it aired. But after watching Good Fortune and having to watch the finale like a day before I watched Good Fortune to see kind of a little bit of the parallels of those stories was kind of really interesting. But I just love seeing Keanu Reeves back in comedy, because his deadpan nature works so well when you let him do that childlike emotion and stuff to it. And I mean, again, you got a 50, 60-year-old man, I forget, he's like 59 or 60. He's getting up there, but you have him looking just like a child when his eyes light up to chicken nuggies, and like just the way he delivers chicken nuggies and some of the things he says in this is just so innocent and deadpan. It just works so well.
Yeah, very smart. A lot of fun. Definitely go check out Good Fortune. Check out Peacemaker season 2. A really good week of a really good week of things to talk about. Those were both really fun and enjoyable watches.
It was one that we didn't even touch on, the part that James Gunn came out saying that he wanted to have Deadpool be part of the finale of Peacemaker because, you're doing all those intermissional doors, that he was going to have him pop up behind a door. Ryan Reynolds was in for it, but he said it was just going to be too many hoops and legal things to jump through trying to work it out with Marvel to get Deadpool in there. But it would have been confusing, but it would have been a lot of fun to see Deadpool pop up in the DCU.
It would have broken the internet had you had Deadpool show up in a DC property like that just because of the James Gunn connection. But if anybody could have probably found a way to make it work, it is James Gunn because he has connections to both. And he didn't leave on horrible terms with Marvel and that entity over there. So he could have made it work, but it was probably too much logistical red tape and nightmares and fees and other things that, DC and Warner Brothers were probably not willing to pony up to make happen, but it's a fun what if of what could have happened in that episode where you just open a door and he's just like, and just turning around and
eating a chimichanga,
just seeing Deadpool in there or something. It would have been something humorous, but would have been fun to see. And it's a fun what if and what could have been.
Outside of what they're trying to build for the DCU, it's really interesting because James Gunn has made those comments like, he would love to work with Marvel and make a deal where they could bring a Marvel versus DCU or a Marvel and DCU mashup together in live action or animation or something and bring those, comic universes together. Like, there's still, as long as he's there, there's a strong possibility we could get that at some point. Now, really, it has to fit what DCEU is trying to do and where the MCU is that point, because we're getting into the mutants and we're wrapping up a big phase. Is Marvel still going to be doing the phases? Or are they going to kind of change that for the mutant saga and stuff? But it'll be really interesting if we ever do get even just one type of mashup between the two.
I hope so. I hope it happens at some point because you want to talk about a way to raise the bar and just maximize eyeballs on everything. That's the way to do it. Do a Justice League versus Avengers film, and it would just be bonkers.
Like Hulk fighting Superman.
It would just be crazy. You have Batman and Iron Man facing off in a
Loki and Lex having a battle of the minds or something between each other.
Like, it could be a lot of fun, but that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah. And coming up next week, we are going to be checking out the Bruce Springsteen biopic, Springsteen Deliver Me From Nowhere. We love Jeremy Allen White. We said right away when they were going to talk about doing a biopic about him, like, he's got the look of a young Bruce Springsteen. I'll admit, I'm not one who's actually a big fan of Springsteen's music. I can recognize his impact on music and the hits and everything he has, but I've never been a full big fan of his music. So I'm really interested to see if this, as not a fan, as was with like doing the Bob Dylan and Johnny Cash and all those other type of biopics we've seen in the last 10 years, if this can really make me feel something for Springsteen and really feel the music and get connected to his story and his songs and everything through the film.
Yeah, it's an interesting snapshot of his life that's going to be taking place in this film. I'm hearing very early Oscar buzz for Jeremy Allen White coming out of this. Like, apparently he gives a very true award-winning worthy performance in this. I'm excited to check that out. Apparently he does, like so many others do when they take on these roles, he does all the singing in this film, so it's going to be really cool to see how he really embodies Bruce Springsteen, that iconic, gruff, kind of Americana-type voice that Bruce has that's just so iconic, and just really interesting to see this snapshot of his life that is going to be explored in this film. It's going to be a fun one to check out.
Do we get the infamous Super Bowl performance where he slides crotch first into a camera?
No, it's not going to be at that. It's not going to be at that point.
That's the thing that pops in my head with Springsteen now, is that the cameraman's just right there, and then he slides directly into him. Like, okay,
oops, yeah, definitely not that point of his life, but it's going to be a fun one to check out. I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of biopics recently in the last, like I said, 10, 15 years. We've had the Queen biopic, and we've had Amy Winehouse, and we've had quite a ton. It's really going to be interesting where this kind of fits in with, the gravitas of all those others, even like the Elton John biopic and, so many other things. Like, most of them have been pretty solid, so I'm really looking forward to see how Jeremy Allen White plays something a little different than we've seen him in quite a lot. And then, like, after this, we see him playing a Hutt and a Mandalorian Grogu, so we're starting to see him expand in quite a few different characters here. But that's all we have for you this week. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.
To find all of the episodes of We'll Bring the Popcorn, go to our YouTube page, hit the like and subscription button so you're getting our episodes when they drop each and every Monday. If you're listening to us in the audio room on any of the podcasting platforms that we're on, please don't forget to give us a 5-star review. It really helps elevate the profile of the show. And don't forget to go to willbringthepopcorn.com, where it has all of our archive videos, all of our social media information, as well as our merch store, so you continue to support the show in that way. We cannot thank you enough for your continued support.